Good evening, folks. Chris, are you there?
I am here.
Thanks for joining me, and welcome everyone to this mid-afternoon match, at least Eastern Coast time, of the Final Fantasy Total Chaos Tournament. So we have a match here between Cruel and Green Cleric. Cruel, this is the third tournament we're hosting, and Cruel was the winner of the very first tournament we held 2 years ago. And Green Cleric is a NES version player who was also participating in last year's tournament, but I also know he's participating in the FF1 Randomizer League. So he's no stranger to this, at least to versions that go a little bit faster than the NES version does. And the racers are getting started. Congratulations on your PB last night, Chris, by the way.
Oh, thanks. Yeah, I'm currently now the only one in this bracket that runs Lust Dagger, which, by the way, I am actually in this bracket with Cruel and Green Cleric. I have lost to both of them. They're very solid runners, and I'm hoping to see a close race.
Okay, so the match is underway here. First thing you're going to see our characters do, our racers do, is go into this town and purchase a mithril hammer. Just purchase a hammer from the weapon shop, and then utilizing a PSP exclusive equipment glitch, we're going to take advantage of that and transform that into a piece of armor called the Knight's Armor. This is normally available for sale in Melmond and is actually quite valuable. You can purchase it for 36,000 and sell items for half their value, so actually it's worth 18,000 gil if you sell it. We're utilizing the equipment glitch to put one copy on each of our characters, and then we glitch a fifth copy that we're just using to sell to pick up some supplies at the very start.
Yeah, it looks like a Green missed a Knight's Armor there.
I've done that.
And Cruel actually picked up a nunchuck.
I've done that too.
So I do believe both are actually using classic routes. I'm not too sure about Green. I obviously didn't get to watch too much when I was running against him. But both are older runners. They have pretty good times. Cruel's PB is actually a 1 hour and 27 minute even, and Green Cleric's is a 1 hour 34 minute even. So we're looking at some close racers here, RNG permitting. Anything can happen.
So I'll try to briefly explain the glitch here for those that are unfamiliar with it. We utilize a programming oversight of the memory cursor, which is one of the settings we can change in the configuration menu here. So we turn the memory cursor on, and then we go into the equipment menu, and we line up the cursor. It will the game, once we turn the memory cursor on, the game will remember like the last position that the cursor was at for each individual character. So we line it up such that an armor slot and a weapon slot on adjacent characters are ready to go, and then we will try to open the menu that we want of the item of the slot that we want to equip, but we at the same time scroll over. You can see LNR on Green Cleric's screen right here, so he can switch between these two characters using LNR. And what he's trying to do here is basically hit X and then at the same time hit R or L to switch to the next character. And what this does is each piece of item, or each item in the game, especially the equipment item, has an ID value and is stored in one of two tables, either the weapon table or the armor table. If he tries to scroll from like a weapon slot on one character to an armor slot on the other character, it confuses the game, and the game thinks it's the wrong table. So it basically opens up the list of equipment that the character can equip, but it loads the wrong table. It loads the other table, and basically tricks the game into thinking that you can just pull random pieces of equipment out of nowhere and then equip them on your characters. So utilizing this glitch right off the bat, we turn the hammer into a knight's armor for each of our characters, which gives them a huge amount of defense right off the bat, so they don't have to worry about getting hit very hard by many of the early game enemies. Unless they get crit by the enemies, which ignores defense. But basically minimizes the damage and makes it so that the statistics that we would gain from levels aren't anywhere near as necessary.
Yeah, do want to say an oversight from the memory cursor. Green Cleric had actually used remove before to remove one of the knight's armors that we glitch on the warrior. And when he was trying to glitch the judgment staff, which has another special property that we use, he was actually still on remove and was trying to glitch, so he couldn't get it done. So that actually took a bit of his time.
So yeah, I mean, the first glitch we do right in town, we pick up the hammer and turn it into a knight's armor, giving them a lot of defense. And then we go into the Chaos Shrine, and we detour into a treasure room in there and pick up a leather cap. And the cap actually can be used in the same manner, and you can turn it into an item called the Judgment Staff. It's a PSP exclusive piece of equipment that can cast flare when used in combat. So having such a very early access to such powerful equipment can greatly speed up enemy encounters, particularly larger ones like Cruel is facing right here, if they're uncooperative, if we're unable to run. The experience that you get in the early game isn't really worth it, so for the most part the runners will just be running away from all encounters, because for the most part they're not too difficult to run from, and the experience from these encounters is just not necessary. So they will only be fighting fights that they must for story purposes, or ones that give more generous amounts of XP to try to cut down on the amount of time that they spend grinding or leveling.
Something you'll also notice, the runners will try to stay on grass tiles and not forest tiles as much as possible, or marsh tiles. Forest tiles have a higher encounter rate, whereas grass is neutral, and then marsh tiles have a lower encounter rate. So we try to stay on marsh tiles and grass tiles as much as possible. So we see Cruel here already done with the pirates and going out to the ship. Some runners opt to grab the leather shield for an item later on. Not going to happen with either of these runners, I do believe. Green Cleric still might, but I highly doubt it. It looks like Cruel opted to heal up here. One thing you will notice is we don't really heal up a lot, especially in the early game. And it'll be especially apparent with the Warrior and the Thief, because we actually need them to die later on. And that's just for experience reasons. The way experience works in this game is whenever you complete a battle, the experience is split among all remaining party members alive. And any experience they get right now will be divided by 4, because all 4 characters are alive. And they're just going to use that to grind up mages later on.
So Cruel is making his way to Marsh Cave at this point. It's the next objective in the story. There's an item we need in there called the Crown, which is buried on the 3rd floor in a chest. Guarding it is a group of enemies called Pisco Demons. So to deal with them, Cruel will be making his way down there, escaping everything on the way there, and then when he's here, he will use the Judgment Staff to just kill off the Pisco Demons in one go. But he also healed up in advance of before he got there, as in spite of the fact that we have this knight's armor on our characters, the Pisco Demons still hit really hard and can potentially hurt characters that are at lower health totals, like the Black Mage on his team.
Yeah, and we are seeing Green Cleric actually go for Gold Needles before Marsh Cave. Cruel did not, so there will be some variance here just for a little bit. We may see Cruel grab it after Marsh Cave, but Gold Needles are very helpful later on as they get rid of the petrification status, which is very prevalent throughout Earth Cave and Earth Cave and Ice Cavern, because there are cockatrices there.
So Cruel takes out the Pisco Demons here. Just one note about the Gold Needles. It is generally recommended that racers pick them up because you don't want to lose a run to getting a character petrified and having no way to unpetrify them. It is entirely possible to complete a run of this category without Gold Needles, but it is totally not recommended for a race. So, and there are as many as 3 opportunities to pass by Alfheim and pick up needles. So where and when they pick them up is totally up to the runners.
Yeah, definitely. This game, if it can mess up a run, it generally will try to. RNG in this game is not very friendly to runners. We have some ways to minimize it. Going into a town typically resets the encounter rate, but it's just the game itself. RNG does not like players.
Well, entering into any dungeon or switching floors, as you take steps on the overworld or in a dungeon, your characters accumulate a threat value, and that goes up with every step that you take. As soon as you get into an encounter, it resets back to the lowest level, or if you switch floors or enter a town or dungeon, it's the same thing. So you may see characters dive into a town to reset the encounters, although that typically only happens in the early going with Alfheim. So Cleric is making his way through that. Cruel is already done with it, and he's on his way over to Astos. He picked up the crown. He's going to take it over here to Astos, who needs the crown before we can talk to him and engage him in combat. So there's going to be a lot of random encounters for our racers, and there's going to be a heavy element of RNG to this run. Heavier than probably most games that you guys are used to seeing on speed gaming. Because, I mean, the number of encounters and the type of enemies you get in encounters, plus the circumstances such as an ambush or preemptive, can greatly alter the amount of time it takes for runners to deal with each one. On top of that, a lot of the stat gains from the levels we do gain can be random. So a lot of things can dictate the pace that these runners can take. All they can do is react to what they get and then just go as quickly as possible from there.
Yeah, definitely. Grain opting not to heal up before Pisco Demons.
Which is a little dangerous, but it's not usually run ending.
Yeah.
Rule, on the other hand, was using 2 attacks with his melee characters using the Judgment Staff as a weapon, and then his mages were actually using the Judgment Staff as an item and casting Flare. And we do this because Astos has a high chance of casting Death on the opening round of that. He can also attack with a physical attack. But if he casts Death and it lands on one of our characters, depending on which character it lands on, it may lengthen the combat by an extra round. Because they have to do 420 damage to kill Astos at that point. The Black Mage will typically do over 200 using the Judgment Staff as a weapon. The White Mage can usually do either 100 or 200. And the Thief and Warrior can do anywhere from like 40 damage to over 100 if they crit.
Yeah, definitely. And the enemies that we're seeing on Green Cleric's screen, they are scary, especially in the early game. And in fact, anywhere in the game. Especially like right now, we don't have a safety save set up, and they can paralock you, which means all 4 characters are paralyzed, and you can be stuck there for a good while.
Alright. Cleric got out of that situation. It was actually kind of dangerous, because if the Thief had also been paralyzed, then there would have been very little he could have done. Plus his characters were at low health from not healing earlier, so it was a little bit of a danger point, but he got past it.
Yeah, typically in that situation, most runners would use the flee command on 3 and then use Judgment Staff on 1 just to get out of that. because you still have 3 out of 4 chances to flee. But if you don't, then it's generally not worth risking trying to run with all 4 characters when you come against those type of enemies.
Well, he was able to use the staff even with his thief to do enough damage to kill them off. I mean, the damage is based on the intelligence of your characters, but the enemies are also pretty weak in this stage. So even the low intelligence of a thief is more than enough with that power of the judgment staff to kill them.
Yeah.
Cruel, meanwhile, has made his way over to Matoya's cave. Once he defeated Astos, we picked up the Crystal Eye, which is an item of Matoya's that was stolen from her. So we return it to her, and as thanks, she'll hand us the Jolt Tonic. Jolt Tonic, we take that over to the Elven Castle. The Elven Prince was put into a cursed sleep, and the Jolt Tonic will wake him up from that, and once he's awake, he will reward us with the Mystic Key, one of the most important key items we need in this run. So in this early going, Cruel is basically just trying to go as quickly as possible. We don't have any extra pieces of equipment or anything of that nature that would help us flee, and our characters are comparatively underleveled because we're not taking any unnecessary fights for the most part. Now on Cruel's screen here, he's taking a little bit of a half measure here. This can be a lengthy fight, as the Sahagin and Big Eyes enemies can often outspeed our characters. So what he's opting to do is to try to flee with his melee characters and use the staff if that doesn't go off, or if one of the mages goes first, they'll use that staff and kill the group of enemies.
Yeah, definitely. Big Eyes can take up a lot of time using gaze.
Their gaze attack takes a long time, and it also has a chance to paralyze characters. So in this early going, Cruel currently has a lead. I would put it at probably about a minute or 2 right now. But this is a long and random run, so this is not over by any means, in spite of Cleric being at a loss, at a disadvantage right now.
Yeah, definitely anything can happen. Menuing can slow you down. Random encounters can slow you down. Just any little thing can slow you down. There's NPCs that can slow you down in this game.
Cruel's actually on fantastic pace right now. This would be definitely PB style pace, but we'll have to see how the rest of the run pans out for him. So once we have the Mystic Key, we actually exit the castle and then re-enter it, and we circle around to a treasure room that is now unlocked. That since we have that key, it's actually quicker to just exit the town than it is to walk across the town, or walk across the castle and walk up to this treasure room. Inside the treasure room, we pick up the Mithril Hammer, which is another key item we need for glitching, and we turn that into a piece of armor called the Thief's Armlet. This was not in the original game. It was added as part of the bonus content that was originally added in the GBA version and was also included in this version. It is a strong piece of armor with even more defense and evasion than the Knight's Armor we picked up earlier, as well as adding 5 points of agility for each copy that we equip. And utilizing the glitch, we can actually glitch multiple copies of the same piece of armor onto slots, including slots that they were not intended to go on. So he's got it right now on his glove slot, his armor slot, and his helmet slot, even though it's a piece of equipment that's normally only intended for the glove slot.
Yeah, and one thing you'll notice is that they didn't put it on Cruel didn't put it on the shield slot. There are very few items that work on the shield slot because of the shield animation. If you put the wrong thing on it, it can lock up your game. So you will see very few things being put on the shield slot.
Cruel's still maintaining excellent pace right now. He's not getting much in the way of poor sea encounters or anything, which can be the biggest time wasters in the early 20 minutes of this run.
Yeah, definitely.
Cleric's having a slightly stubborn group of wolves over here. But now that Cruel has the additional 15 points of agility on each of his characters, agility factors into our running chances and also increases their odds to go earlier in combat rounds when issuing commands. So it should speed up the likelihood that his characters go earlier in the turn order and should give them a higher chance to run against most enemy encounters. It obviously doesn't work against encounters that are otherwise that are unrunnable.
Right. And one thing that you guys will notice here, Green Cleric did it a little bit. Whenever they step on dock tiles, you do not get an encounter there. So typically we try to use that to our advantage. That way we just have a couple extra steps where we don't have an encounter.
It's a slight time loss to take those extra steps, but there's no risk of an encounter on that. And every encounter wastes probably a minimum of 6 seconds that you get. So minimizing encounters is pretty much the key to trying to go as quickly as possible in this run.
Yeah, and definitely, and this game can give you encounters every step if it wanted to. That is how bad the RNG can be sometimes. I think I've had 3 steps in a row where I've had encounters before, and it's just not a very pretty thing. Looks like Green has his Mystic Key as well now.
Yeah, right now it looks like, based on their timer, I want to say that Green is about 3.5 minutes behind right now, which is a pretty significant deficit this early, but again, it's not something that he can't overcome.
Yeah, definitely, because anything can happen. Earth Cave can throw out a petrification lock. You can get paralyzed locked. Anything can happen in Earth Cave. And hopefully we won't see that from either runner. But it would give a chance for Green Cleric to catch up at this point.
So if there's any questions in the chat or anything you guys want to know about this run, please feel free to ask in the chat, and we'll do our best to answer your questions. In the meantime, Cleric is now using the Mystic Key to go over to Cornelia. There's a treasure room in the back that was locked by the Mystic Key, and there's a key item that we need to advance even further in the plot, called the Nitro Powder. It was known as the TNT in the NES version. Cruel, meanwhile, has proceeded past that and has already given the TNT Nitro Powder to the dwarves and blown up at a canal, and that opens up access to basically the rest of the map at this point.
Juice Strike back in chat asks, what do the Thieves' Armlets do? They provide a lot better defense than the Knight's Armor, while also giving agility, allowing us to run faster. Or have a better chance of running, I should say. Because it's an extra 15 points of agility with all 3 of them equipped. And we also see Green going for the Mithril Knife.
Yes, I mean, the Knight's Armor only adds defense, whereas the Thief's Armlet adds defense, some evasion as well, and agility. So for the purposes of the speedrun, it's more desirable to have that. Cruel, meanwhile, stopped in Melmond to purchase a steel gloves from the armor shop, and then turn that into the most powerful weapon in this category, called the Barbarian Sword. It was only included as part of the PSP content that's available in this version. It has an attack power of 125, and for those of you that were comparing it with known weapons from earlier versions, such as the Excalibur only has attack power of like 45. So it's nearly 3 times as powerful, and on top of that, it also includes a strength bonus. And utilizing the equipment glitch, we can actually put it on each of our characters, so every single one of Cruel's characters has a Barbarian Sword equipped, making him extremely overpowered in melee combat right now.
So on Cruel's screen, you will see the first use of a safety save. This floor can be terrifying. There are cockatrices on this floor, and then there are stuff that can paralyze lock you.
Such as this group right here.
Yeah, so definitely anything can still happen. We don't want it to, but typically at this point, like, if Cruel would have got paralocked, it would have been a reset. It's quicker to reset than it is to deal with that. World record for this category is 1 hour, 22 minutes, and 50 seconds by Saya27, I do believe. It is. The next closest time is actually 1 hour, 24, 33. But that also is RNG based. We've not had a time that has been above 2 hours in this tournament so far, which has been very good.
The best race time I think we've ever seen in this tournament was also by Saya, a 125. it would be exceedingly rare to see something of that caliber in a tournament race, just because the players should be taking slightly slower and safer strats in order to guarantee that they can finish the run.
Let's see here. Is Say actually in the tournament?
He is not in this tournament. He was in last year's tournament.
Okay, yeah, because currently the fastest time in this tournament is a 1:27.44 by Kabetha.
Yeah, she had an excellent run with good execution and very solid RNG. So the best times are likely to be in the 127, 128 range. And a lot of the runners in this tournament are newer runners that are still learning this, so they'll have times more likely in the 130s or the low 140s.
Yeah, one of the things that's to look out for, and it's a good thing if we get it. HP rolls are a major thing as well. Cruel getting some very unfortunate Pisco Demons. They are unrunnable as well. You will notice that there is an HP variance between the two runners on some of their characters. And we generally want above 270 for the final boss. So we have a chance of getting it. We have a chance of not getting it. The fastest run in this tournament so far had a 283, I believe, for a Black Mage. And I don't think Kabetha had to use Giant's Tonics at all.
No, what typically happens is characters have predetermined levels where they will gain certain statistics, and they can also gain them randomly on other level ups, usually at around a 25% rate. So at certain levels, the Black Mage will gain HP, but if he fails to gain HP on the other levels where he has a random chance to do so, he could be at a lower disadvantage. Him and the Thief particularly are the characters that we're watching their maximum HP values, because they're the ones that are most likely to be under 270 to the 300 range that we'd like for the final fight. But either way, we have Giant's Tonics exist in this version, which can raise your character's maximum HP in combat. They're purchased later on. So, I mean, whether or not we get enough, there's a strategy for them to be able to overcome that later on.
Yeah, definitely. Looks like Cruel is already on his way out, having beat the vampire and grabbed the Star Ruby.
Yeah, Cruel's still on excellent pace at this point. He got down to the 3rd floor, confronted the vampire with the help of our Barbarian Sword. It only took 1 hit to kill the vampire, and then in a chest behind him was the Star Ruby. But we couldn't proceed any further in the Earth Cave here, so we take the Star Ruby over to this Giant's Cave here, which is also blocked by this giant, and in order for him to move, we have to present him with the Star Ruby.
Yeah, definitely. And the one thing that there is to notice about this game, it is a lot of fetch questing, not too much story. Story hasn't changed since the NES version. Item names have been changed, but other than that, it's a lot of fetch quest and a lot of battles. So,
yeah, it's mostly the early going is this fetch quest, because we have to be able to reach each of the 4 elemental caves, Cavern of Earth, Mount Gulg, the Sunken Shrine, and the Flying Fortress. The earliest one we can reach is the Cavern of Earth right here, but we are locked for a significant amount of time doing a bunch of fetch quests to get access to it.
Okay, and Juice Strike Back asks in chat, how come we see players use a different setup of characters, Warrior, Thief, White Mage, Black Mage, compared to the original NES version? The reason being is the Black Belt or the Monk in this version really isn't too useful. And it's also because of the items that we need. I do believe after the Barbarian Sword, we technically don't need the Warrior anymore, if I'm correct.
The party has been chosen specifically to take advantage of the routing that the equipment glitch affords us. The Warrior has access to the greatest selection of equipment of any of the characters, and therefore has the greatest utility in performing the equipment glitch to other characters. In particular, if we didn't have the Warrior, we wouldn't be able to utilize the Barbarian Sword. The Thief is actually a very strong character, has been rebalanced in this version of the game, and utilizing the levels and the equipment we can get him will be the strongest melee member of our party. The White Mage will be utilizing, we will be using for heal aura at the end, and primarily for the later fights, and also just quickly heal us up as we need to. And the Black Mage has access to some powerful utility spells, such as Haste and Teleport, which are key to speeding up our travel times, so we don't have to backtrack as much and can speed up combat so that it's much safer.
Yeah, and while Porsight says speed up combat, this is not an active turn battle system. So technically, haste works differently in this game, as we'll see later on. If you notice, whenever they attack anything, they have a hit counter above their heads, and it actually allows characters to attack more per turn, per se. They just get more hits in, and they do more damage.
Yeah, it effectively doubles their hits.
Yeah. So it makes it a lot better to use, and I do believe Temper is the name of this spell. It may be that in NES version. I have not played the NES version, so I can't really speak for it.
Yeah, Temper exists in this version too, but Temper just raises the attack value slightly, although it can stack considerably. Haste does not stack after the first cast, so Haste is a better one-off usage in this category. So now that Cruel defeated the vampire and gave the ruby to the giant, he was able to proceed to the Sage's Cave on the other peninsula, and as a reward for defeating Vampire, the Sage gave us the Earth Rod, which is an item we need to be able to progress to the lower floors of the Cavern of Earth, where we can confront Lich. So Cruel, I believe, is just making his way back. There's basically two trips required to Earth Cave based on the design of these things. You see Cleric right now just picking up the Earth Rod, so he's going to start making his way back towards the Cavern of Earth.
Yeah, and we'll see what the Earth Rod is to be used for on Cruel's screen here. He is fixing to interact with this slab, and the Earth Rod actually removes this slab. It's the only reason we actually need the Earth Rod in this game. But that allows us access to the last two floors and to Lich, which will ignite a crystal and allow us to get the canoe that we need for the next part of the game.
So Cruel's right now on the 4th floor trying to get through that. And he's getting... Honestly, this is a great time for Cruel right now. This is still totally a PB possible pace at the rate he's going right now.
Yeah, definitely.
So Cruel will take a save here before Lich. Lich has a spell he can cast called Blazara, and if it happens to act before our melee characters can kill him, it can wipe the party. And our characters are at low enough levels that very few members of a party can even survive, even if they were full health. So there's not really a value to healing up our characters. We can just safety save, as there is the ability to save anywhere in this version, so we don't need any tents or cottages or anything like that.
Definitely, and one thing you will see different on Cruel's screen than you will probably see from any other runner, except for maybe Green Cleric. Other routes only have the Barbarian Sword on the Warrior and the Thief, so typically we use them to attack, and we just have the White Mage and Black Mage defend.
Well, the original strategy before the Lust Dagger route was discovered was to attack with all the characters. Because you need to
slash mode.
You need to do 1200 damage to kill Lich in this version.
Yeah.
And it's possible to actually kill that with just the Warrior and the Thief. But if you have in the other routes, when those characters have the Lust Dagger or other weapons, they will not be capable of doing anywhere near as much damage to them as characters with the Barbarian Sword. So any characters with the Barbarian Sword will be preferable to attack with.
Right. I wasn't paying attention to Green Cleric's screen, sadly. I don't think Green Cleric has a Barbarian Sword on his mages, does he?
I have not seen, no. I'm not sure. To my knowledge, that is his common route, but he did pick up the mithril knife earlier, which is not usually used in the barbarian sword route. He's also taking a slightly longer path than most players take in this fourth floor. There's 3 paths you can take. You can take an upper path, a middle path, and a lower path. The lower path is actually the longest one, which he took, but it's just a number of tiles.
It depends. There's multiple routes. There's the Sage's Staff route. Go ahead.
Well, there's basically 2 variations that people currently use. There's the Lust Dagger, the original route that was discovered, where characters will pick that up and give that on their mages, and they will utilize a couple pieces of items that they can use as spells in combat, such as the Mage's Staff, or the Mithril Knife can turn into a black robe, and they'll utilize that with their white mage character to kill certain groups of enemies. Or a more recent strategy that was developed was picking up a Sage's Staff and utilizing spells that you can purchase for your Black Mage, Thera, Thundara, and Blizzara, and having the Black Mage kill those groups instead.
I don't know if Green Cleric actually got that Ochre Jelly on floor or B5 or B4, but Green Cleric did find an Ochre Jelly. Which, depending on place, is a 1 in 64 encounter. Yeah. That is an unfortunate part of Lich. We've actually had a runner in this tournament wipe 4 times to Lich's Blizzara. And
let's see what strategy Green Cleric does, because if he attacks with only 2 characters, that probably indicates that he's going for the Lust Dagger route.
Yeah, more than likely. Yeah, because it doesn't look like his Black Mage and White Mage are switched, so I would assume...
Oh, he got hit again.
Yeah, that's unfortunate.
Shin's not going to live that down, but right now the game is not giving the help that Green Cleric is looking for.
Yeah, Green may end up with a streak just like Shin's. And while Shin did have the 4 Blizzaras, he still put up a very respectable time in that race.
There we go.
He
got higher rolls on his Warrior and Thief this time, which made it less of an issue.
Oh, and to answer that question earlier, G Strike Back, Lust Dagger is a route that this group doesn't necessarily use. Cruel opting for an older route, and it looks like Green Cleric may be using the Lust Dagger route or a variation of it, which we have actually seen in this tournament as well.
Yeah, Cruel is using the original route that we used 2 years ago, puts a Barbarian Sword on each character and does not utilize the Lust Dagger. So at this point, the difference is basically the Lust Dagger is an item that was added in the bonus content. It adds 20 points of agility when equipped on the weapon slot. So that, in combination with the other pieces of equipment that gain agility, gives them a really high chance to run away from combat and act very, very quickly. So they can, more than likely, the mages will be able to act first in combat, and if it's a runnable combat, let them run away. If it's an unrunnable combat, let them pick an item or cast a spell to clear out the group really quickly.
Yeah, rather than having to wait for enemies, because in a large encounter, if all the enemies get to go first, you're wasting time. And that's exactly what we don't want to do.
Cruel also only put black garbs on 2 of his characters because of the formation. The way the formation works in the older route is to put Barbarian Sword on 4 characters. The characters have to be adjacent to the warrior in order to be able to put that weapon on. So the 2 characters that are adjacent, he puts it on. The warrior can equip it naturally, and then he has to formation change in order to be able to get it onto the 4th character. And then once he does that, he only puts the black garb on 2 characters in Crescent over here. So the goal of Crescent is to pick up the canoe, and while we're here, we shop and pick up a mithril gloves if you're doing the Lust Dagger route, and if you're not, you just pick up a mithril axe in the weapon shop and turn that into a black garb. So this is another item that is added as bonus content, features even more agility when glitched onto our characters.
Yeah, Lenofus in chat says Kroll is really opening up the lead here. Yeah, RNG is definitely not being very kind to Green Cleric. I think that's a couple ambushes in a row now. Yeah, anything can happen. Not a very fun thing to have happen when you get encounter after encounter after encounter.
Ooh, ambush Mind Blast. That could be a little dangerous for Cruel here. We'll see what happens. He's probably fine, though.
Yeah. It's definitely not a Dark Wizard ambush. That's one of the reasons why you will see runners safety save and Ice Cavern. Ice Cavern is a major troll point for this run. Even after the grinding that we will do here, you're still not safe. So that is a major thing. And the fun thing about the speedrun route that we have, and the game actually wants you to do Ice Cavern after Mount Golg, and we do it beforehand because Ice Cavern has an item we want called the Levistone or floater in the NES, and it allows us to get the airship, which is the fastest mode of travel. And it looks like Green Cleric forgot where he was going there for a second. And it does look like Green is actually using Lust Dagger out. He sold the hammer and the staff, is grabbing ethers, and he shall be grabbing...
Yep, this is... If he's picking up the Mithril Gloves, that means he's going to be going for the Lust Dagger.
Yeah.
And the Mithril Axe. You can see Cruel here does not have the Lust Dagger, and as such his characters are a little more subject to going slower in the turn order. So for larger enemy groups such as this, or enemies that have higher agility and tend to go earlier in the order, this makes it a little riskier to go through Ice Cave. The Lust Dagger, generally, as soon as you get it on there, along with a couple Black Garbs, makes your mages really super speedy. So it tends to speed up encounter-heavy zones or other areas that are very, very trolly with encounters.
Yeah, definitely. And with the added items that we get on Lust Dagger route, we typically have more options in terms of encounters. Mostly like...
Cruel took a save there. Just ahead of that, there's a couple tiles in the game where in certain dungeons, when you step on them, it forces an encounter automatically. Sometimes it's an unrunnable encounter, sometimes it's a runnable encounter. He actually got a preemptive on that particular tile and was able to run away instantly. One of the advantages of a preemptive encounter. Enemies can also ambush us, and that guarantees, just like this right here, each enemy gets one opportunity to attack our characters, and this particular group of characters enemies can paralyze our characters if they get unlucky. So Cruel's not messing around, he's just going to use the judgments. They have to clear them out since he doesn't have access to other items.
Yeah, and that's the one thing that helps Lust Dagger out as well. Judgment Staff casts Flare, and it's, I do believe, an 8-second animation, whereas there are other items that we can use that take less time and deal enough damage that they'll wipe out an enemy group in one turn. So the more unrunnables they get, Lust Dagger route really does shine. And we actually see Kroll here fighting the Evil Eye, and you will see that he is setting all of his characters to defense. We need the Warrior and the Thief to die, and that is for... that is very unfortunate. We need them to die. That way we can get some extra experience points for the mages. Black Mage also going down, unfortunately.
Yeah, his Black Mage is a little low on health and is a little at risk to Thundara. One other consequence of this route is that it's entirely possible for Evil Eye to outspeed us if you're only using the Barbarian Swords. It's a much less common occurrence if you're using the Lust Daggers. But
yeah,
as part of the setup here, what Cruel is trying to do is every time he steps on this tile, he's going to force an encounter with Evil Eye. Evil Eye actually grants a large amount of experience points to our party In order to gain some of the spells later on, our characters need a couple levels at this point. So this is an ideal spot for us to grind the levels. We leave the warrior and thief at low health, use the defend command, which is actually only added in this version of the game, and try to wait until Evil Eye kills off our melee characters so that we can split the experience such that our mages level up even quicker.
Okay, Juice Strike back asks, so now that Cleric has the Lust Dagger, would we say he's catching up because of the speed up in the next hour of gameplay? It really depends. If they both get the same amount of unrunnable encounters, then technically he would. Just little bits here and there. But if they don't get the unrunnables, then not really. RNG is still very much a factor.
Yes, at this point, they're both in the ice cave. Green Cleric's making his way down. Cruel's basically almost done grinding here. His goal is to try to get his mages to level 18, so that by the end of the Citadel, or actually the end of Mount Gulg, they're level 19. I think it's actually going to be the Citadel in this one, because I think he's going to shop in the other, in the old order.
Yeah, I do believe Krull actually shops first before going into Mount Gulg. Typically, it's interchangeable. You can do it after you get Oxiel. You can do it before or after Mount Gulg. It really doesn't matter too much because you're going to be in the same areas regardless, I do believe. It's just runner's preference on that.
Yeah, it's a little bit faster on the whole to go to shop after doing Mount Gulg because there's a little less overworld movement.
Ooh, but Green Cleric getting a preemptive Dark Wizard. An ambush would have been bad there.
Yeah, this is... Oh, here we go. This is a dangerous fight here.
Oh.
Cool getting the White Dragons. He's probably okay.
Yeah.
He's probably okay because he healed up. But if he had not healed up, he would have been in a pretty dangerous spot there. So that is a rare 1 in 64 encounter. So Cruel healed up and he's got all his characters. His white mage is already... I think his black mage is already 19. So he's got more than enough experience on that one.
Yeah, because we need the mages to get to level 19 for Hilara and Teleport, I do believe. Because I do believe Haste you can get earlier.
Yes, you can. Both Hilara and Teleport are level 5 spells and require a minimum level of 19. Plus, they also require the class change. So the next destination, once Cruel has the Levistone here and has made his way out of Ice Cave, is to go pick up the airship. Then he's going to use that as his primary means of transportation for the rest of the run. The airship flies 4 times as fast as you can walk on the land, and does not risk any enemy encounters while you're flying. So it is by far the preferred method of transport.
So we seen Green Cleric take a safety save during the Evil Eye encounter. Anytime that you step off the spike tile that forces Evil Eye encounter, you can actually get another encounter, and with 2 of our characters alive, it could be very bad if it's an ambush. So it's a very smart move. Minimizes some of the backtracking that we have to do.
Safety saves in general are a great idea for this run, because while they only take seconds to perform, they can save you many, many minutes of backtracking. But in general, most areas are not particularly dangerous to the party due to the equipment we have utilizing the equipment glitch. So, at that point, the other advantage of saving there is that if he accidentally walks off and falls through some of the cracked ice, which would drop him to a lower level, he doesn't have to circle back around here. He can just reset the game and reload the save.
Yeah, and it looks like it was answered in chat. Is there a continue option if you die in this game where you start at the beginning of the dungeon, or is it like the original where it's just starting at the last save? It is last save, so had they not saved since Lich, they would be back at, before Lich. So it definitely makes it a not fun thing, especially in the beginning stages. If you get paralocked, you essentially have to wait it out.
Cruel's making his way over to the Citadel here. There's actually only a landing tile that kind of far away. Every other tile over here is some combination of marsh, forest, river, or mountain. So there's nowhere really closer to land your ship, so he's going to have to take a longer walk.
Yeah, and on Green Cleric's screen, we also see that he did not revive the warrior. Reason being is we simply just need the extra health on the thief and black mage, and one less person gives them more experience.
It also gives him a higher chance if he gives a lot of encounters to get enough levels so that the thief could learn haste when he class changes as well.
Yes, that is true as well.
So it's just a minor difference along this route. I mean, Cleric's route guards again, or Cleric's choice of route with the Lust Daggers guards against worse RNG, but it's entirely possible that Cruel's could go faster if he got better RNG.
Yeah, definitely. And a lot of people actually take notice that there is a river by Citadel of Trials, and we've actually had some questions in the past. Why don't we just use the ship? Ship is actually slower than airship, and the walking to get over to Citadel than it is just to take the ship itself.
You can take the ship. There's no reason. There's nothing that's stopping the runners from taking the ship. It just takes longer and risks encounters on the sea.
Yeah. And we see Cruel here through the maze in a Citadel of Trials. The quickest way to get through here, and it's even in the notes, just take the bottom teleporter. You'll make your way through it pretty quickly.
Yeah, a lot of these rooms, this teleporter puzzle here is designed so that you enter a room and you usually have one or two options to get in or out of a room. If you take the wrong teleporter, it sets you back to the start of the whole sequence. When you have an option, you take the bottommost teleporter, and that will advance you to the next area. But Cruel's through that puzzle now. He's on the final floor of Citadel. Stepping on this tile here forces a fight with nightmares. Usually one or two spawn here. Our characters... This actually is a runnable encounter, but it can be difficult to run from given the equipment of our characters, so it is generally faster to just attack them.
Yeah, and the one thing about unrunnables, the game will not tell you if it's an unrunnable encounter, so you'll just waste time trying to run from it. If you get a preemptive, though, you can run from it regardless.
So Cruel is through those force fights now, and making his way there. Cleric's looks like he's caught up a little bit, honestly, because he's not very far behind at this point.
Yeah, definitely. It definitely comes down to encounters. We will see them grab gauntlets, and we use that later on in Sunken Shrine because using those, it casts Thundara.
Well, they actually pick up, on this floor, they pick up two items. And right at the start, they pick up the healing staff, which is an item we need to be able to glitch a piece of armor called the Lordly Robes, which raises intelligence. It's another PSP exclusive item that was only in this version. That will factor in on the final fight. And then he also picks up the gauntlets, which serve two purposes. They glitch into an item called the Golden Staff. Did he just skip? Oh yeah, Cleric forgot he has to talk to this NPC to be able to use that. Because I think in the NES version you don't need to. But, we utilize the gauntlets to glitch into an item called the Golden Staff, and also can be used in combat to cast a Thundara, which is particularly helpful in Sunken Shrine.
Yeah, definitely. We do see Green Cleric catching up a little bit. Just depending on encounters, Green Cleric could actually make up quite a bit of time.
I mean, Cruel is doing his best with what he's got so far, and he's an experienced runner of this, so he's going to be tough to beat at this point, but it's definitely not impossible for Cleric to catch up.
Yeah, very much so.
Now, Cleric's going to be making, it looks like, a little mistake here, because the Mage's Staff is an item with a shorter animation than the Judgment Staff here, but our Mage doesn't have enough intelligence to be able to kill them in one go. It's a very common mistake of this round if you try to use the Mage's Staff against these Minotaur zombies, which are unrunnable. The Judgment Staff is still recommended at this point until a little bit later when they have more intelligence.
And lordly robes.
And lordly robes.
Yeah, so the reasoning behind going through Citadel of Trials is we need the rat tail, and when we take the rat tail to Bahamut, which we see on Cruel screen, it allows us to get the class change, which we need for those level 5 spells that Porsai talked about earlier. And it just overall helps. I do believe some of the stat rolls are a little bit different after we class change. I'm not too sure on that one. I do believe they were in the older games.
I don't believe they're different in this version, but I'm sure Gyre or somebody more knowledgeable could correct me.
Yeah, definitely. I will actually have to look into that. So right now, we actually do see Cruel doing his shopping for spells.
Yeah, this was the common route 2 years ago on this particular route with the barbarian swords. So after class changing, he would go pick up the swords. Then he would go shopping for teleport and heal Aura. Then he would detour over here to pick up haste, and then go to Mount Gulg. And then he would do all the sunken stuff, such as picking up the Oxyel afterwards. The other route has altered it slightly, where it will pick up the Bottled Fairy and the Oxyale, and then go shopping, and then go and take care of Mount Gulg. So the routes basically converge after when they're getting to Sunken Shrine. That's when the routes converge at this point.
Yeah, definitely. I still actually do Oxyale before Mount Gulg. It's just, we're right there. So yeah, it is definitely runner's preference on what you do.
So Cruel is in Mount Gulg now, making his way down these floors. It's actually a 5-floor dungeon, but you have to do 2 different sections of the 3rd and 4th floor. On the vast majority of these floors is a lot of these lava tiles. Stepping on these lava tiles damages the party, 1 damage for each tile he steps on, but there's no risk of encounters on them, so it's actually recommended to step on as many lava tiles as possible in order to minimize the number of encounters you can get. But doing so, if you just go all the way down this, your characters are usually going to be at low health, so Cruel stops and heals up a little bit. Just in case of an ambush from enemies such as a Hellhound or a Fire Hydra.
Ooh, and it looks like Green Cleric's getting somewhat lost here on where to go. Trying to find Bahamut's cave.
There it is. Is that the right one? Yeah, there's a number of caves that you can, in that whole section that you can go. You need the one island that has forests on it that also has 2 holes. One of the holes actually is an extra hole that does not exist in other versions of the game because it leads to one of the bonus dungeons available in this version.
It does actually exist in the GBA. It is called Hellfire Chasm. And we will actually see a cutscene unlocking it on Cruel screen after this fight. But we typically don't go to that dungeon.
So yeah, Cruel makes short work of Marilith here. Mount Gulg is easily the easiest of the 4 dungeons. With the lava tiles, there's not going to be too many encounters. There's not too many enemies that are particularly dangerous here at all. There's almost no unrunnables. Only the fire elementals on the very bottom floor, I believe, are unrunnable. Although there are ogre mages and hellhounds you can run into as well. So then, with the Prowler, the Barbarian Sword, Cruel only has to do 1,440 points of damage, and that's more. It's not hard at all to do that to Marilith. And her strongest spell is Fyra, which is not enough of a threat to our party at this point. So here we see Cleric doing the next step that you're going to see Cruel do shortly after this. Cleric's basically doing a slightly more optimized path, which involves stopping in the caravan, picking up the fairy's bottle, and then he's going to take it to Gaia, release the fairy, and pick up the Oxyale, and then he's going to detour and go to Mount Gulg and do shopping afterwards for his spells. Cruel, in the meantime, has already done Mount Gulg and has already shopped, so now he's just going to pick up the fairy, take it to Gaia, release it, and then he can go straight to Gaia. Or straight to, Onrak and Sunken Shrine. but the Oxyale is needed in order for us to be able to access the Sunken Shrine dungeon.
Yeah, otherwise we wouldn't be able to breathe underwater. One of
While it
our
looks kind of
commentators
close right now, so while it looks like Cleric is ahead, technically Cruel is ahead right now just because of his routing choices.
Yeah, definitely. Krull has done Mount Gold, whereas Green Cleric has not at the moment. So we see Green Cleric on his way to Mount Gold.
He's a little lost right now, getting closer.
Yeah, this area is somewhat of a maze.
There is an in-game map that characters can use, but most runners know the map well enough that they don't need to access it.
Yeah, airship movement can still be tricky, even for old runners at times, simply because we spend a lot of it looking at water tiles, and it can be easy to get lost, just depending on if you have any extra movement.
So Crow's entering Onrak here. We're going to see if this NPC down here is blocking his path or not. And it doesn't look like it is today. Yeah, Cruel's in a pretty comfortable spot right now. His party's going to be in good shape. Once he gets access to ribbons in the waterfall cave, he'll be pretty much in smooth sailing mode. There is less menuing in Cruel's route, but it has a couple of it's just a little bit simpler of a route with less nuance. So
yeah, definitely. Here in Sunken Shrine, there's actually two paths in this dungeon. The left path leads to Kraken, and the right path leads to the Rosetta Stone. While we could go beat Kraken, we need the Rosetta Stone as part of a fetch quest to get into Flying Fortress. So we have to grab that.
how's he doing? The Cleric is now fighting Marilith here. This should be a pretty simple combat with his characters.
Yeah, definitely. And despite Green Cleric being behind, an hour and 1 minute Marilith is not a bad time. We generally shoot for sub 1 hour Marilith, but it's still not a bad time at all.
Oh, I got you, Geoterra. Now I see what you were going for there.
Yeah,
I missed that one. I missed that one.
I chuckled a bit whenever Geoterra said it.
Alright, Cruel has the Rosetta Stone, and now that he has the teleport spell, this is the first instance he's going to be able to use it. So teleport takes you back one floor, puts you right at the end of the last floor that you were on. So doing this puts him back pretty much towards the beginning of the entrance of the shrine, and then he can just instantly detour and go the other path towards Kraken.
Yeah, definitely. And there is a spell for White Mage, I do believe, called Exit, that could technically be used, but it takes you all the way out of Onrak, so you have to go through Onrak and get to the Sunken Shrine again. Teleport's just a better spell overall for this.
Well, depending on the design of the dungeon, they might function the same, but Exit takes you all the way out in one go, but it also has a significantly higher level requirement.
Yes. Juice Strike back in chat asks, I kind of want to run this. Is there a Discord? Are there emulators allowed? Discord is in the bottom of that link, or in the last part of that link. And yes, Green Cleric is actually running on emulator. Cruel is running on PSP. We actually do have quite a couple runners in this that prefer the actual console itself. I am one of those runners. But overall, emulator is faster because of saving and resets. If you don't have a lot of saves and a lot of resets, then PSP is definitely the way to go, in my opinion.
So we see Cruel here is getting a number of unrunnable encounters here. Encounters with ghosts, Sahagin Prince Chief, or water elementals by themselves are unrunnable encounters. And since he did not pick up other items, the only way for him to deal with that is to use the Judgment Staff to quickly clear up those groups of enemies. So Cleric is landing at a slightly farther away point because that's the most common point I think you can land in the NES version. So I think Cleric is much more familiar, I think, with the NES version, so a lot of the new amenities, such as slightly closer landing spots, are not as familiar to him.
Yeah, definitely. And Cruel on his screen, you will see he went to the right of the Light Axe chest. To the left and to the bottom of that chest are actually forced encounter tiles. So going right is actually better.
Yeah, he picks it up from the right side, and he's going to use the Light Axe that he picks up to glitch an item called the Survival Vest. This is, once again, another PSP exclusive item, which adds even more agility to our characters. So at this point, our characters are each rocking 3 copies of the Survival Vest on their characters, each of which gives 15 agility. So they are now very, very speedy and will generally go very, very quickly and early in combat and have a very high chance to run. The highest chance we're going to have throughout the rest of the run.
Yeah, definitely. And we're going to see Cruel go into Kraken. Kraken is the easiest of the 4 fiends. Even if he does get a spell off, not really too big of a deal at this point, and Barbarian Sword will just rip through him.
Yeah, Kraken is actually, in contrast to the NES and other versions, he's a complete pushover in this particular version, at least this form. He doesn't have any particularly dangerous attacks he can use in the opening rounds against our characters, the worst being his ink attack, which would blind our characters, having very little effect on them.
Yeah, and I mean, definitely, Cruel's route really does shine here in these sort of fights, boss fights particularly, because of the fact that he does get 4 attacks off, whereas Green Cleric will generally, when it comes to physical attacks, only be using his Warrior and his Thief.
But we can see an advantage on Green Cleric's side. That last ghost group that he got,
Definitely.
he can use the Mage's Staff he got to save a couple seconds worth of animation time, as it does enough damage to kill those guys and doesn't take as long to cast.
Yeah, Mage's Staff casting Fira and Gauntlets casting Thunder are definitely useful in this dungeon. But
now,
unfortunately,
I know he picked up the knife earlier. I don't know if he glitched that into a black robe, which he could use for Blizzara as well. I did not see him do that.
He did.
But he may have done it.
He did. I watched him do it. I was going to commentate on it, but I do believe something else was being asked in chat at the time.
Cruel getting an unrunnable here on the overworld, which is a little unfortunate.
Yeah, one thing to note about the Rosetta Stone floor is I do believe there is no encounter.
That's correct. There's no encounters on that floor.
Yeah. We may see Green Cleric opt to pull a Leo strategy where he grabs the ribbon in Ice or in Sunken Shrine. But otherwise, we can get it in Waterfall Cavern, which is what Cruel will be doing. And Waterfall Cavern has a very high rate of RNG or encounters. Typically, a very sour point for runners.
So yeah, Cruel's just making his way through this. It's kind of a windy cavern, kind of a pain to navigate casually if you don't know where you're going. But he knows where he's going. He's just got to work through all the heavy encounters that he's running into and get to the last room, which has the treasures. In one of the treasure chests is a ribbon which he needs. And then he can talk also to the robot that's in the room and grab the warp cube, which is one of the key items we need to advance to the final dungeon.
Yeah, the fetch quest that they're technically on now, it's a 2-parter. So the Rosetta Stone is one part of it. And it allows us to get into Mirage Tower, and the warp cube is needed in the Mirage Tower. So you have to have both, per se. Rosetta Stone is useful for learning a language, which we need to get the chime, which allows us access to Mirage Tower.
Can you get this game on Vita? I'm not aware if you can or not.
Okay, so I can actually answer this one. It is not in the PlayStation Network store. If you have a Vita on 3.60, you can actually install custom firmware on that one. And they do have a PSP custom firmware emulator inside of that called Adrenaline, and you can run it on that. And it works the same exact way as a PSP.
So what we saw Cruel do there was a unique glitching in that when he picked up the ribbon, and in contrast to most of the items that we pick up, we actually want to use the ribbon itself. But what he does is he doesn't have the item to glitch more ribbons. So we utilize the ribbon and we glitch it into an item called the Geek Tax, which is its counterpart in the ID tables. And then we use the counterpart item, the Geek Tax, to actually be able to create more ribbons. It's the only instance where we basically use an item to create another item, and then create another item, and create the original item in the first place, more copies of it. Usually we just pick up an item that we don't want in order to glitch it into items that we do want.
Yeah, definitely. And the ribbon, I do believe, has all elemental damage and grants immunity to instant death attacks, if I am correct on that. And it is one of the few items that will actually be put on the shield. Survival Vest and Ribbon are shield-friendly items, I do believe. Or no, is it Lordly Robes?
Lordly Robes, Survival Vest, Ribbons are all perfectly safe to be used on the shield slot.
Okay.
Using other pieces of equipment risks a hard lock at the console if the character happens to block in combat while wearing one of those items, because it calls an animation that doesn't exist.
Yeah, we've had some runners have scary moments, and I think we've actually had a lock happen because of that. We see Cruel here now parking very far away. There are no parking spots near Lufane at all, and you just have to walk through a lot of tiles, risking Minotaur zombies to learn a or to get the chime. And lots of narrow passageways. NPCs can block you, but it looks like Green Cleric will be going into Kraken now.
Yeah, there's no risk of any danger on Kraken's fight. Cruel, meanwhile, is just plowing right ahead, and he's got a pretty significant lead at this point. He's getting blocked by the NPCs here in these narrow city streets in Lufenia, though.
Someone in chat asking, what happened to Green Cleric? Nothing happened to Green Cleric. RNG in this game can be a pain at times, and Green Cleric has just gotten some very unfortunate RNG. He's
had worse RNG. He's made some slight mistakes, but I think most of those are chalked up to the fact that he's more familiar with the NES version of the game.
Yeah,
he is with the PSP version.
And I mean, Green Cleric will still hopefully be putting up a very respectable time. And yeah, he did have 2 deaths to Lich.
To this point, I would say that Cruel has just gotten better RNG and has also executed better.
Yeah, definitely. RNG in this game could actually have I do believe it can be like a 30-minute time variance if it's very bad.
So Cleric's all set with Sunken Shrine, and he's going to make his way over to Waterfall now. Cruel, meanwhile, is all set with the chime and is going to head to Mirage Tower. He's just got to get back to his ship.
Yep.
Alright, there's a nice, quick, easy spot he can land at right here, and then cross this desert. There's not too much that's particularly dangerous in the Mirage Tower coming up. So, I mean, Cruel's not really at risk here unless he gets a war mech and he's unprepared, or if he just fails to heal ahead of Tiamat. Before that, he should be in pretty smooth sailing.
Yeah. One thing to note of in Mirage Tower, there will be vampire enemies, and we fought a vampire in Earth Cave. A lot of the enemies that we fight that are spike tile enemies are unrunnable, or have a very low chance to run. Vampires are not a spike tile enemy, they are an NPC enemy. Therefore, outside of that one encounter, they are runnable.
This is probably one of my most hated floors in the game. The second floor of Mirage Tower for Cruel right now.
Yeah, definitely.
Actually, they're both in my favorite. They're my least favorite ones. Waterfall and Mirage Tower Floor 2 are like the worst for me.
Yeah, they definitely have high encounter rates. And even entering that room that Green Cleric just entered in, there is a spike tile right behind that door.
Now, what we're going to see here is if Green Cleric does a slightly different menu glitching option due to his route choice.
Yeah, I do believe Lust Dagger only puts Ribbon on Warrior and Thief at this point. Let's see here. Yeah, it puts it only on Warrior and Thief. I have the notes up because I was running it last night. But yeah, definitely it helps out. We are seeing Cruel go into Flying Fortress, and Flying Fortress has a couple of unrunnable encounters, Evil Eyes and Blue Dragons.
I'll be honest, I've never seen a Blue Dragon here.
I have, actually. It's still an easy fight.
I've never seen it in the Flying Fortress. I've seen it in Mirage Tower.
I've actually seen one in Flying Fortress. I'm really hoping Cruel gets War Mech. We have not seen a War Mech this tournament, I do believe. And it would definitely be a nice thing to see.
Are there any super relevant differences between versions with respect to how it affects speedrunners? So, I mean, on top of everything that we've discussed, obviously there's the ability to save anywhere, which makes they can take riskier strategies and go faster. And the other significant difference of this version, especially the GBA and the PSP version, is they changed the spell charge system in those versions to the MP system that's more common in later games. So they don't need charges, they just use MP. So items like Ethers were added to this, Ethers and Phoenix Downs. There's a lot of quality of life enhancements that have been made in this game to just speed things up. So they don't need soft drinks, they can bulk purchase items, they can skip a lot of cutscenes. So there's just a lot of enhancements that have been added. I mean, they can auto dash in town to go twice as fast.
Yeah, that's one of the things of the original NES version. When it was created, one of the bases for it at the time was Dungeons and Dragons, and it uses a similar spell system in the NES and PS1 version to Dungeons and Dragons. Whereas, like Forsyth said, they switched to the MP system. I do believe after 3, I do believe the original NES version of 2 uses a spell charge system as well. I'm not too sure about that.
Yeah, I would actually have to check into that, but I believe it actually might use an MP system in that one. But I think the strength of the spell was based on MP.
Oh, yeah, 2 does actually use MP. So that is my bad. So yeah, 2 was the very first one to actually use the MP system.
So Green Cleric's making his walk down to Lefenia just to pick up the chime. Who meanwhile has finished off Tiamat. And this is a brief cutscene showing the opening of Whisperwind Cove, which is the last of the bonus dungeons that we would see, but none of them are in. Unfortunately, there's no benefit in the any % speed run to visiting any of the 4 dungeons. There's no entering the bonus dungeons. There's no pieces of equipment or any items that we need out of there. that would greatly speed us up there. Plus, there's no quick or easy way to get out of there if we go into there.
Yeah, definitely. We will be seeing Cruel head back to Chaos Shrine, the very first dungeon of the game. This cutscene that Cruel will be seeing throws a lot of new runners off. Whenever he enters the Chaos Shrine, there is this robed person that goes up to the north of the shrine and opens up a dungeon that is actually the PSP exclusive dungeon, Labyrinth of Time. We don't go there in any percent. All bosses we do, but any percent no. We actually go up to where we fought Garland.
So yeah, this version features 5 bonus dungeons, 4 that were added in the Soul of Chaos in the Dawn of Souls version, and then 1 PSP exclusive one that was added here. None of them have any benefit to the any percent other than the content they added, including in terms of items, benefits the game, or at least benefits the 80% speedrun.
Yeah, because I do believe the super boss of Labyrinth of Time actually is the one that has the Barbarian Sword, which we use throughout the run.
It also has Lust Dagger, Survival Vest, and Lordly Robes. I think are all other options as well.
Oh, that the super boss can drop?
Yeah, there's just different forms of it.
Oh, that's right.
In there, in the PSP dungeon, there is a number of puzzles that you can perform, and then depending on how you perform on the puzzles, you can spawn one of 8 different forms of the super boss added in this game, and then each one has a specific set of attacks that it can use, and each one drops a different bonus item that you have. There's like 8 forms of the boss. Each one drops a different unique item that can be utilized. Many of the items that it drops are being utilized here in this run, like the Survival Vest, the Lordly Robe, the Barbarian Sword.
Cruel fighting the Death Eye here, which is a forced encounter. One of the issues is if they make mistakes in movement, they can re-encounter those bosses, and the bosses that'll be coming up on Cruel's screen also are spike tiles, so if they move off that tile and then have to move back on it, they have to fight the boss again.
Cruel's making his way now through the final dungeon of the game. First, when you start on the first floor and you go up to the 3rd floor and play the loot, and to open access to the back half of the dungeon. The loot was the key item we got for rescuing the princess right at the very beginning of the game. Cruel's taking some safety saves here, just in case of bad encounters.
That is very smart to do as well. Other versions of the game, I do believe the GBA is also got a lock on it, but you can actually skip the loot in the earlier versions of the game, and if you get to this dungeon, you can get locked inside of it and not be able to progress. And here we are seeing on Green Cleric's screen the ribbon being used.
So Cruel is now on the first of the refight floors with the 4 fiends that we've... Yeah, I agree with Cruel. It's a very, very difficult... The Labyrinth of Time is a difficult dungeon to do quickly in a speedrun setting, because it's very, very random.
Yeah. I do believe it is one that you actually have to give up commands for, and depending on commands, depends on how much time you get. Cruel safety saving before Lich. Lich can flare, and flare has a potential chance of wiping at times. But otherwise, just gonna attack it with Barbarian Swords. Barbarian Sword is known as the hack and slash route for obvious reasons.
Yeah, in many of these combats, Cruel is capable of quite literally just holding X, and it will issue the commands automatically for his characters.
Yeah. Cruel actually going into Marilith floor, you will see a lot of encounters from Mountain Gold here. Generally fire type enemies, but we're going to skip most of them. This is a very short floor.
Cleric's still making his way through the Flying Fortress right now.
Yeah.
I mean, barring a really consistent set of trolling encounters, Cruel has basically won this match. So he's just going to have to work his way through Merilith, Kraken, and Tiamat, and then Chaos.
Yeah.
It's going to be nearly impossible for Cleric to catch up at this point.
Yeah, Cleric just had some very bad RNG. No, overworld movement is not affected by agility. It is the ability to run from encounters. I don't believe there's any Final Fantasy game that overworld movement is affected by agility.
Unless they mean like stutter stepping in FF9.
Oh, that is true.
Which is not really technically your agility in game. It's just your agility as with manipulating a controller.
I do believe it's turbo of 30 hertz on FF9 that we can't use because it's not allowed.
So this is probably the most annoying of the refight floors because of these water elemental enemies, which are common on this floor. Cruel doesn't have a great way to deal with them other than using the Judgment Staff, because they can spawn in slightly larger packs than he has characters to attack with.
Some Cruel being a barbarian in chat. Cruelman the barbarian.
Cruel getting an encounter one step before he would have been fighting Kraken.
Yeah, and I do believe Sahagin Prince is the unrunnable. No, I think it's Chief. But yeah, generally the refights, especially on the barbarian sword, they're really easy. Only one that gives us an issue is Tiamat 2, and essentially we just use we just haste the thief through that one.
Well, most of these fights should usually be 2-round encounters, possibly 1 round depending on damage rolls, but most of them will be 2-round encounters. The exception may be Tiamat depending on damage rolls.
So definitely depending here, getting a boss. Cruel may actually PB.
I think he's a little behind PB at this point, but he's going to be close.
Cruel's PB, and I was wrong earlier. His PB is actually 1 hour 28 minutes and 5 seconds.
He will be close, but I think he will be just behind, unless he gets a very, very good chaos pattern.
That is very possible.
I don't think even that can save him at this point. I think it's just there's too much time that's locked into the cutscenes of getting set up. But it's still going to be... It should probably be a sub 130 run at this point, which is wonderful for tournaments. That's pretty much the goal that you really, really want if you can get away with it.
Yeah, it would definitely be our second sub 130 time of this tournament as well. So we see Cruel here. He shall be glitching the golden staff onto the white mage and then changing a survival vest to clothes. It's just to slow down the white mage, make sure that she goes after chaos and can heal the party.
Green Cleric is getting a group of green dragons over here, so he's going to use the black robe because the animation is much, much, much shorter than the Judgment Staff and does enough damage to kill them.
Yeah, definitely, and that's the upside to Lost Dagger route, is just simply because of the fact that we have... Ooh, Green Cleric going a little bit too early there. But we have items that take a lot less time than Judgment Staff.
So, Cruel's strategy for this final fight. This is the last fight of the game. His Thief and Black Mage came up a little short in their HP rolls, so he's going to be using these Giant's Tonics to get their max HP up, and then using Heal with his White Mage exclusively to heal the party. And the Warrior, from this point forward, so they use the opening round just to set up the Giant's Tonics and start hasting the party, as well as start healing. And then after this, they're just going to use attacks with the Barbarian Swords on their characters. and try to survive whatever chaos throws at them at this point.
Yeah, and there are some players that opt to get haste on the ninja as well, simply because it saves one turn of the black mage hasting, and they can start fighting at full power faster.
But I mean, the most dangerous part of the run by far is the opening turn or two. If you can usually get past that without losing anybody, you should be pretty good for the majority of the run, or the majority of the fight.
Oh yeah, definitely.
Cleric getting some Ice Gigas Winter Wolves over here. The Mage's Staff can deal with them a little quicker than the Judgment Staff. Oh, he's still, no, that's right, you still use the Judgment Staff in this version, because the Gigas have a lot of health.
And it looks like Cruel has finished with a time of 1 hour, 29 minutes, and 26 seconds SRL time. Still very respectable time, not a PB, unfortunately. It is a PB for this tournament, though. Chaos... I don't actually know.
Chaos has 20,000 HP in this version.
Oh, okay.
And he does have Courage. He does have Courage, kind of like he has his heal in the NES version. But he does have his heal. His heal is a full heal in the original version of the NES, which I think only has 4,000 HP. In this version, he's got 20,000, and his heal is capped at 9,999 if he uses it.
And it looks like Cruel is ready for an interview. And I cannot move him in. If one of our administrators would be so kind as to move Cruel from the channel into the commentary channel, that would be great. Green getting some unfortunate white dragons.
Alright, Cleric is currently on the Lich floor.
Yeah, and just getting some very bad RNG here.
Well, his Thief and Black Mage definitely got better HP rolls than Cruel's did over the course of this run.
Oh yeah, definitely.
They're still very, very close to borderline. At least the Thief is, especially.
And here it actually sounds like we got an audio glitch. Thanks to equipment glitch, audio just has a chance of disappearing. Welcome, Cruel. How do you feel about your run?
That was pretty good. That was pretty good. Happy to have gotten the second sub 130 in the tournament.
Yeah, it's an excellent time for this tournament.
Yeah, it was 4 seconds off of my quote-unquote PB splits. Those are not actually my PB. It's like a minute and a half off, but the closest I've been in a long time. So I'm happy with how that went. Really good early game, really good late game. Pretty bad mid game, but hey.
We got Green Cleric with fire elementals here. Yeah, I don't know. You were doing a very solid girl. I didn't see any real mistakes on your part. It seemed like a pretty clean run and very solid RNG throughout.
Yeah, it felt really clean. Like I said, the RNG in the mid game on the way to Canoe and in Ice was kind of terrible. But all in all, like, I played well, so I'm happy with how I did. And the time shows. So can't be too mad about that.
Yeah, I do believe that actually puts you in second fastest run for this tournament so far.
Yeah, it does. I just checked as I was waiting for you guys to drag me in. It's, only Kibitha has had a faster run in the entire tournament.
Yeah, and she had a 127, which is an outstanding run.
It's insane. That even beats my PB, so it's something for sure.
I mean, we know that you're more than capable of getting sub 128 if you
are
so inclined.
I know. I remember that one run where I was on pace for a high 125 and then died on Chaos because he crit my white mage. I'm still salty about that.
Yeah, a year later.
Yeah, it's been a year, and I'm still mad about that, but oh well. Sometimes, you know, with this game...
I mean, Final Fantasy 1 does tend to happen.
For sure.
So... I mean, you don't look very rusty or anything like that. You look like you're perfectly practiced for this one.
I've done 3 runs in the past month. That's about it. But then again, you know, I've run this so much in the past that 1 or 2 runs and you're back in the game, basically.
Yeah, it's like riding a bike. You don't forget this one very easily.
Yeah, I do believe your run versus me, you were rusty for. You hadn't picked the game up in over a year. I do believe that's what you had told me.
Yeah, the first run I did in the tournament, I was pretty rusty. So that ended in like a close to 135 time, which is still not terrible, but like the rust probably showed in that, especially in my menus. But you know, I raced some old bosses the other day against a buddy of mine, and you know that gets you quite well back to the feel of the game. And the menu today was the menuing was on point. I think the only menu that didn't go as well as I would have liked to was the very first one. And I think that's more so just because my hands were, you know, I still had to warm up and all that. I have that a lot with the first menu.
Yeah, I saw you briefly put on the ruby armlet. It's before the clothes, right at the end there.
Yeah, I hadn't seen that I picked up the longsword, so that kind of threw me off guard. But I recovered really quickly from it. I think that was still among one of my better menus, even despite that, so...
So here we see Cleric has made his way through all the floors. He's heading into... Well, he's setting up for the Chaos fight now. He's putting his staff. His menuing is a little bit different since he's using the Lust Dagger route here.
Yeah, what we will see is Green Cleric actually put the Barbarian Sword on the Black Mage. Generally, we don't put the Barbarian Sword on until this last fight, simply because we need the speed, but in this fight we actually need the damage. Speed really doesn't matter for this one.
Yeah, I mean, runners are perfectly capable of watching each other's streams, or the tournament stream if they'd like, just to keep an eye on their opponents. Unlike rando tournaments where you're not supposed to be watching each other's streams or being given hints from chat. Because you're supposed to learn and earn your way through that run.
Yeah, I mean, so with a category... Sorry, go ahead.
Go ahead. You go ahead. He's just in the cutscene now.
Yeah, for tournaments like this, like the route you're going to be taking is set, bar some route differences that Green Cleric and I took throughout the thing. But it really won't make a difference whether we see where the other person is or not. So at the end of the day, for these kind of matches, it doesn't matter. Now for randos, you know, that's a whole other story.
Yeah, we have some runners, like Kroll was showing earlier, who actually do react to chat in the tournament. I know I react to chat as well.
Yeah.
Simply because we have a ton of downtime in this game, believe it or not.
I would have done it more, but about like 10 minutes into the run or so, the chat stopped working, and I didn't receive any more messages, and I didn't really realize that until like an hour in and then was like, I'll refresh when I get a chance.
Right, yeah, definitely.
Cleric getting Blaze on the opening round, but he got both of his tonics off, and his Thief and Black Mage have more than enough HP, so he should be in pretty good shape going forward here.
Yeah, definitely. Green definitely had better HP rolls. Unfortunately, the Chaos spell loop is not very friendly, and he gets off all of his spells one right after another, and it just takes up a lot of time.
He's not particularly in danger at this point, though, so he should be fine. This will probably take 6 or 7 rounds. He looks to be on the 3rd round at the moment.
For the question that Juice Strike Back had, I've never actually understood what's stopping a player from cheating and seeing other players stream other than just giving their word. Is there a system in place for that for the random, though? Realistically, no, but generally speedrunners typically have a bit more on for that, and they don't do it because they rather it be a thing of skill rather than cheating. Or at least in my mind. I know there are definitely people out there that do it, but most of us would rather place because of our skills rather than something like that.
Cleric proceeding just fine. Depending on what Chaos chooses to do in this round, he may be able to get under 40.
Yep, and definitely in the hold X to win mode here.
Oh, there it is, right there.
Yep.
139.51 on stream. We got an SRL time 139.55.
Yep. Definitely not a bad time at all. So we'll see if we can get Green Cleric in for an interview as well.
I'll take this time to just thank everybody for watching this afternoon. There will be more races coming up on the Speed Gaming channels in the upcoming days. And it looks like Cleric's going to decline an interview today. But for those of you that were here, again, thank you for watching. Cruel, again, congratulations on the win.
Thank you.
Yep, that is your second win so far, and my match with Cruel will be Tuesday, and I'm looking to take a win. Definitely looking to take a win, but my time is nowhere close to the time that Cruel just put up, so we'll see. We'll see. Anything.
We're gonna make it an interesting match. Let's just put it like that.
Oh, definitely. I'm definitely gonna try my best, RNG permitting. But yeah, please follow the runners, commentators if you want. Definitely follow Speed Gaming for more stuff. Subscribe to Speed Gaming as well. Anybody else have anything that they'd like to add?
I don't personally. Perhaps Cruel has some shoutouts, but other than that...
As it's been said, be sure to follow both of the commentators as well, and thank you both. Thank you both for commentating the match today. It was a lot of fun, and looking forward to the next one.
And I'll just give a quick shout out to Feasel and the Speed Gaming crew for helping us out with the tournament.
Oh yeah, definitely. They are a pleasure to work with. Every time that we've been on Speed Gaming, they make sure everything's running amazing for us all. And definitely for those that want to get into this, we do have a Discord. We are all very helpful, and we do actually have multiple guides out there, so we can help out with pretty much any question that you have.
Yeah, this is a great beginner level speed run. I mean, no experience needed. This is pretty much one of my first actual speed runs. and probably
It's
the most dedicated run I play.
Yeah, it's such an easy run. It takes no effort at all to get into this.
Yeah, I do believe like we have a lot of new runners in the tournament, and even though we do have the new runners, like nobody in this tournament so far has had above a 2-hour time. There have been some unfortunate matches in this tournament, but nobody has had above a 2-hour time. So definitely an easy run to get into.
Yeah, just a handful of forfeits so far.
Yeah,
But I mean, in general, this is a pretty safe run. So long as you're taking reasonable safety saves, you can always complete the run.
And you only need one glitch, which, as you can see, was used throughout this run. So
if anyone's worried about the glitch or anything, it's not a hard glitch to learn or to perform. It's just hard to perform it quickly and easily at the same time.
Yeah. And generally, the best way to improve time is just practice menus. So
learn maps, practice the glitch, and everything else comes eventually.
But I do believe that is it for us. Let me see what we have next on Speed Gaming.
I don't think there's anything on this channel. Oh, never mind. There's some Ori, I think, going on after this.
Yep, Ori and the Blind Forest. I don't know whether it's a randomizer or not. It does not say. But definitely stick around to check that out. There is Link to the Past, Key Sanity races on the other channels. So definitely a shout out to Speed Gaming for all of the work that they do. They host a lot of tournaments and a lot of races. So definitely go give one of those a watch.
Alrighty, guys. Thanks everybody for tuning in today. Stay tuned for some Ori on this channel coming up at 3 o'clock, or you can check out one of the other channels with a bunch of Link to the Past randomizer Key Sanity races.
Yep. Have a good one.
Bye, guys.